Okay, welcome to what I think is going to be the first video on this channel. Some of you might know me from my podcast, which I have with a colleague and very good friend of mine, in which we talk about politics. It's called What Went Wrong. I'll put the link in the description for that. But I also want to kind of delve more into philosophy, and so I thought I'm going to start my own channel as well, so I can do some philosophy content on there. I'm not really sure where I'm going to take this right now. I'm doing reacts as my first video, which only because I'm not really sure how I want to establish this, and reacts is a sort of more comfortable one to start off with. So we're reacting to a video about Inner Monologue. What was it? How different are our inner monologues, which sounds interesting. I'm gonna pause every once in a while, sort of comment on things, and we'll just have to see kind of where this channel goes, to be honest with you. I haven't really got a direct plan in mind so much. I just want to just chat about philosophy since just kind of see what happens. So without further ado, let's go on with the video.
About 47% of waking hours are spent thinking about what isn't going on, meaning for almost half...
Okay, we've only just started the video, I'm sorry for pausing already, but that is crazy. 47% of waking hours just, like, not even living, just in our own heads. That's crazy. People overthink way too much. Like anxiety is like the most common thing in the world right now, and that is all just thinking too much. You're thinking about things that aren't happening. It's quite interesting.
Existence. You're living in your own mind, and that's not great, since it could be the reason you feel down a lot of the time. Your mind generates somewhere between 6,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day.
Should I move my face cam? I might chuck it down here instead. That's a fat number, blimey.
Tiny flashes, fragments and impulses, most of which appear and disappear without you ever noticing. But inside that private space, only about 1 to 2/5 of your thoughts show up as words, or as an internal conversation, or a narration you hear. The rest is just a mix of images.
A little bit off topic, but I saw this thing about how people's imaginations work differently. So some people's imagination isn't pictures, it's just like words, or like predominantly words, which I think is interesting. Some people don't have the like creativity to just like actually have detailed images in their heads. They have to put it into words, and some people just like don't have an imagination at all. They just like can't picture things at all, which is quite interesting.
Video cues, flashes of memory, feelings, gut pulls and half-formed ideas that you understand without ever saying them. And that's assuming you're even in the 30 to 50% of people who report having an inner voice at all. Granted, most of these numbers...
Yeah, I mean, that's just NPC. How can you not have an inner monologue? Like, what? That's crazy to me. That like 30 to 50% of people just don't have an inner monologue. They don't have a voice in their head. Like, oh, that's weird. Like, you just don't exist at that point. Obviously, like, you know what I mean? But like, I don't know.
Self-reported, since we're yet to find a perfect scientific way to measure qualia or someone's private experience.
Let me move that so you can read that. I feel like I'm going to move my camera around because I'm not really sure where I want to put things, but there you go. Qualia is the what it is like character of mental states, the way it feels to have mental states such as pain, smelling red, smelling of rose, etc. Oh, sorry, seeing red, not smelling red. Smelling of rose, etc. Interesting.
It's safe to say, inner monologues and the many ways people think are far too strange, too diverse and too fascinating to not talk about. And yet we all just assume everyone else's inner world works like ours. It doesn't, at all. Because there isn't one default setting for thinking. There are 5 entirely different ways that people can think. Some people, about 40%, have internal voices, which are like constant dialogues or conversations going on with themselves in their head. They talk to themselves, argue with themselves, rehearse conversations they might never have.
See, that sounds crazy when you like say it out loud. Like it makes you sound like insane, like talking, arguing with yourself, having imaginary conversations with people. But it's like everyone does it. It's one of those weird things where it's like when you actually hear someone's like actually say what it is, you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I do that. That's just like psycho. But then everyone does it, so it just doesn't really matter.
For them, silence isn't real silence. It's just the moment that voice speaks. So if they'd lost their keys and they go looking for them, their mind goes, did I leave them on the table? Maybe in my jacket? Maybe I dropped them in the car? That kind of inner speech shows up in about 20 to 30% of thoughts on average. The variation is wild. Some people use it more than 70% of the time, others almost never do. Then, around 50% of people are visual thinkers. These people don't talk to themselves. They mostly see things, meaning instead...
That's quite interesting. I wonder if that's like really artistic people, like people with really good imaginations, like people that, like, I don't know, really good writers or artists or musicians who are like in a very much more creative mindset all the time.
saying, where are my keys? They get a mental snapshot of the last place they remember having them, without any words associated. Maybe even picture their keys in each place they think of looking into.
But that would be so much more effective. Maybe not for other situations, but like if you're trying to remember where your keys are and you can like picture the last place you saw them, that's basically photographic memory, right? Like what differentiates that from having photographic memory? Because instead of thinking, like, say you're in an exam and you're trying to think, oh, what was that thing that I learned like last week? You could just, in your head, just imagine you're sat there and you can just see what it says on the paper. Or is that way too extreme? I guess that's probably quite a level up from like imagining where your keys are, to be fair. But like you get the picture, right?
Or about 20%, only think in feelings, so their thoughts are more like emotional responses. Their thoughts show up as emotional pulls, moods, or body level sensations. Looking for keys becomes a tiny jolt of panic, then a feeling that points them toward the bedroom or toward their bag.
That must be such a stressful life. Like, just your entire life, it's just senses of panic and this, like, not just panic, but like you just live your life off senses. Like, senses lie to you. Like, I mean, you know, if you know about Descartes, you know why I'm saying that. But like, I'm not saying I agree with everything Descartes says, but I'm just waffling on. But like, I don't know. I feel like that would just be such a stressful way to live, just living off feelings and senses all the time. That just sounds stressful.
Their emotions guide the search before their mind explains it. Another 20% of people say it's common for their thoughts to be more like senses. This means when they try to remember their keys, they might mentally feel the motion of putting them in a coat pocket or remember the sound of them hitting a surface. Lastly, and maybe the most misunderstood group, which is surprisingly not that small, are the ones that have no audio or visual association with their thoughts whatsoever. These are people who report not experiencing any kind of inner thoughts the way the rest of...
Yeah, that's just like an AI walking around us. It's an alien. They're not... I don't want to say they're not human because that's just not very nice, but like, that can't be true. There can't be people that just have nothing going on in their heads. That's crazy.
Now you might have noticed that these percentages don't quite add up to an exact 100. That's firstly because this is still a self-reported topic, meaning the values shouldn't be taken as exact, but also because most people are a blend of more than one style. You could talk to yourself internally and still visualize things clearly. You could think mostly in concepts, but get emotional signals when something demands it. The mind isn't locked into one format. It's fluid, layered, inconsistent in the most human way. And even within one category, people exist on different levels. A verbal thinker could have full discussions with themselves, sometimes even say stuff out loud, while another hears just fragments of phrases. A visual thinker might see crisp, detailed scenes, while someone else only gets faint silhouettes. A well-known example of this difference is something called the apple test. If I ask you to close your eyes and picture an apple and then describe what you saw in a comment, you'll notice the results scatter everywhere. Some of you will see it like it's physically there. with perfect textures, shadows and highlights. Some could even rotate it, move it around. Some wouldn't even need to close their eyes. They could do it that easily. Others would get a dim impression, like a low-resolution image. Some only see the word apple, or the idea of one, with no picture at all. And a small portion of people, or apparently
I can't believe that. Like, some people, if you tell them to think of an apple, they just think of the word. And they can't actually picture it. Because then if I close my eyes and I try and think of an apple, I can see an apple with great detail. And it's just, I never really truly think about whether other people can see that, you know? Like, you always kind of assume that people's minds work in a kind of a similar way to yours, but it's just, there's so much more difference than you think there is. It's interesting.
0.8% of you will see absolutely nothing, a complete absence of imagery, and that's aphantasia, or the inability to form mental images. And what's crazy is that people with aphantasia often don't realise they're different until their 20s or 30s. They hear people say, "Picture this," and think it's just a figure of speech. When they find out other people actually see images, their whole understanding of reality shifts. Temple Grandin, the famous animal scientist with autism, is on the opposite end. She's a hyperphantasic visual thinker, meaning she's able to have exceptionally vivid mental imagery to the point where it can seem as real as actual sight.
That's insane. Imagine living like that. That would be... I don't know, I wonder if she sort of feels like that's a curse or a gift. It's difficult to, like, know what you think unless you're in that position, but that seems awesome. I feel like that'd be awesome.
Trying to understand word-based thinkers feels like trying to understand aliens. This is why communication is harder than we think. You might describe something with words, but the person listening might think in pictures. You might give someone directions verbally while their brain wants a map. Teachers explain concepts linearly, while some students only understand them spatially. We think we're speaking the same language, but sometimes we're not even using the same operating system. And the differences don't stop at how we think. It shows in all the weird little things we always could do without really noticing, although they're kind of insane if you think about them, like how almost 80% of us can replay music internally almost perfectly, and how few of us could even hear it so vivid that it's nearly indistinguishable from actual sound. Another thing is how you can talk to yourself in your head in voices you can't even do in real life. Every pitch.
I think about that quite a lot. I think that's such an amazing thing that people overlook so much, that we can have our internal monologue could be voices that we just can't do in real life. Like, in your head, you can take on the voice of literally anyone and do it. Like, it seems so obvious when you say it out loud, but I think, like, if you really think about that, like, it's like your voice, your brain knows how to make the sound of that voice, but you still can't do it. Like, your brain would know the exact way to get your voice box to make you sound like this person, but you still can't do it. Like, I feel like people overlook that unless I'm thinking too much about it, but I don't know.
No matter how deep or high, accents or tones are all almost natural to do inside. You could probably even perfectly mimic every person and character you could think of, even if it's a voice you physically can't produce. It feels like voice acting if you had no limits to what you can do. And this is something over half of us experience. Some people can also feel sensations just by thinking about them. If they think about cold metal, they get a tiny chill on their fingertips. If they imagine running their hand along velvet, they get a faint texture sensation. If they see pain, they often can't stand looking because to some level they feel it too. This shows up in around 15% of people, and interestingly, those who report this kind of sensory imagination tend to score higher on measures of effective empathy, the kind of empathy that lets you feel what others feel. And if your mind still isn't impressing you enough, you could even train it to use something called the loci method, or a memory palace. It's basically turning information into a route you walk through in your head. You take a place you already know, like the layout of your apartment, and you assign each object or corner to a piece of information you want to remember. It's the standard tool used by competitive memory athletes.
I have never once heard of that. Is that... I don't know if that's just me, but I have never heard of that in my life. Is that something I should have heard? Because that sounds really interesting. I'm going to have to look more into that. That could be life-changing. I don't know if I'm being dramatic now, but that's really interesting. I need to do more research into that.
Not because they're born different, but because this one technique works insanely well. In studies where regular people are taught the method, their recall often jumps to several times higher than before, sometimes 5 to 10 times the amount they could remember with repetition alone. And even though it's that effective, barely anyone uses it. And this is why people with visual thinking are usually better at memorizing, sometimes even having photographic memory, although some consider it a myth. That doesn't mean people with
photographic memory is honestly like a dream of mine. I would love to have photographic memory. Like, just think about how much more enjoyable school would be if you knew that when you learned something, you just knew it from that point. That just sounds like such a gift.
Inner voices are any less fascinating. They usually have an edge when it comes to planning, problem solving and rehearsing, since they silently talk all the time. But that same skill makes them more prone to looping thoughts. And proof is, overthinking shows up more often in people who rely heavily on verbal thinking. And all of this goes to show how the way you experience consciousness, a particular mix of voices, images, feelings and silence in your head, is completely unique to you. Nobody will ever know what your mind actually looks or sounds or feels like, and you'll never truly know theirs. You can describe it, you can approximate, but the lived experience is forever yours alone, because every person you meet is in a way living in a completely different universe than you. Their internal reality is fundamentally different from yours. The only life you truly live isn't the one people see from the outside, it's the one inside your head, and it's really humbling to notice that everyone passing you in the street every day has a whole life going on, as special and full as yours. But that's a topic for another video.
Wow, that was a good video. I'm probably going to do some more reacts for a bit, because I'm not really sure what I would do my kind of first... I don't want to say original, because then it makes me sound like I'm being lazy, which maybe I am, but like... It was a good video. I'll link the podcast in the description. And yeah, thanks for watching, everyone.